So what? Like, why do we care? The New York Times is profiling UFOs. And that's why we should care. Because the New York Times has an incredible reach. And if they have the ability to bring people in to start asking questions, people that'll take part in protests or going into their congressmen or senators or representatives and saying, look, I read about this in the New York Times. This is something very serious. This is something that's not to be laughed at. If you do not have solid reporting for an extraordinary story, it will fall apart. Things like this demand extraordinary evidence because it's extraordinary. If you start making these types of claims and you throw it on the front page of the New York Times, and then part of it starts to fall apart, does that mean that people are going to take you seriously? When they start digging in deep, when they go, wow, Senator Harry Reid said he believed these are off-world vehicles crashing here. That's amazing. And you Google and you come up with, that meanie John Greenwald's channel and realize, no, that's not it. Or they revisit the article and they realize, wait a minute, where's this attribution to Harry Reid? And then they see the fine print at the bottom that was removed within 24 hours. The damage had already been done, by the way, on that specific article, because so many people copy. I call it copy and paste journalism. They take what was published by the New York Times and they put it into their own article. They jumble up the words, of course, and they make it their own. They call back to the New York Times, but they say Harry Reid said these were off-world vehicles. Some of those periodicals changed their story after the New York Times did. Others did not. So you have this domino effect of bad information. Take it to the next level. So then all of a sudden you start going into your representatives. People aren't watching those articles every day, meaning refresh. Is there a correction? Let me refresh again. Is there a correction? People don't do that. The majority of people are going to read those articles in the first 24 hours. That's going to sink into them, and then they're going to act. And I believe that that's why this is so important, is that when you look at history and the absolute awful reporting done by the mainstream media over the decades, why are we now just happy that they're covering it in a so-called serious way, but they just don't care about the details? Isn't that the same thing as a joke? When things aren't accurate, it needs to be pointed out. You need to hear when things are wrong. Why? Because the things that are right tell the story the way we need it to be told. And that is in the way of the truth. That is in the way that we demand. That is in the way that we deserve. Now, some may think I'm just going too far and I'm harping on them too much. And maybe you're right. But in the end, you want people to take this seriously. Because if the New York Times is just catering to the people that are okay with just being mediocre in the coverage, that may sound harsh, but that's what we're doing here. We're saying, at least I've seen it anyway, in reactions to videos like this, we're okay with mediocrity because the New York Times is covering UFOs. That's what we need. No, it's not. The topic deserves much more scrutiny, but careful and accurate scrutiny. If you just kind of do whatever, throw whatever you want out there, and hopes that your, core audience will just kind of blindly believe it and not double check, well, then you shouldn't be the New York Times with the standard that they try and project. You're a blog. You're catering to a certain group, and that's it. But the topic deserves more. With Senator Marco Rubio putting essentially his booty on the line here, saying that there's an interest on his end and that the Senate is going to start pushing, they're not going to go to, Joe Blow's blog to try and figure out the truth, because they do use media sources. Their staffers use media sources. That's where they get a lot of their stuff. We all know that, depending upon the issue, that's what they do. They go out and they try and trust good reporting to bring in information to the Senate staffers to then push for that more classified information behind the scenes. But the staffers will give them a groundwork to look at. And if that groundwork is shoddy and mediocre and falls apart, like Senator Harry Reid saying off-world vehicles, like things happening, then dates change, witnesses aren't backed up, there's absolutely nothing. when they start looking into that, that will affect their mindset on how hard they're going to push. If you had stellar reporting, let's say The Drive, that gives you kind of the truth with documentation and backs up what they say, and when stuff isn't backed up, they write about it, which is what you need. They don't ignore it. They don't just change their reporting in hopes that you won't notice. They point it out. That's the type of standard that you need. And that is why evidence is so important. I think it's fantastic military men and women come forward, but if it's just their testimony, we need something else. Because when they tell you that there's documented evidence there, if they said, we filed a flight safety hazard report, part of the story is that report, right? I think we can all agree with that. If the Navy says it's not there, that's part of the story. Whether it be a cover-up or whether it be the witnesses lying or maybe a little bit of both, you guys deserve to hear that full story to push harder and find out which is the truth. And yet the New York Times decided you shouldn't hear any of it, and only decided to go ahead and write about those 8 reports within 48 hours of The Drive doing it. And then all of a sudden, their witness from a year prior was backed up by a document that didn't match up with the description, the characteristics of the encounter, or the date. But the New York Times was probably hoping you wouldn't ask. And buried deep within a personal Facebook page, not the New York Times, but one of the freelance journalists who wrote the article, they put the accusation that the Navy changes those reports to make them less mysterious. That is a heck of an allegation to make. And if there's any truth to that, which I would be on board with, I believe wholeheartedly in a cover-up of the UFO topic, there's enough verifiable evidence to prove that. But if you're going to make that claim, you got to back it up. You can't bury it to your core audience on your personal Facebook page, but not present evidence. That's not a harp against her personally, but rather something that if you are going to explain away what happened by saying that the Navy covered it up, they just changed the wording to make it less interesting, less ominous, less mysterious, less whatever, you need to back it up. I hope I'm not alone wanting that evidence. I hope you all understand why I push and push and push. I'm here to show you both sides of it, the stuff that really is fascinating and supports that there is a cover-up, the actual evidence to do that, but also sometimes when it's not there, because you guys deserve to hear that too.